My sister tried to ruin my proposal, so I ruined her marriage. I had dreamed of this day since I was a little girl. Michael was planning something special, and I could feel it. We had been together for 3 years, and I knew he was finally going to propose. My heart was full of excitement, but the problem was my sister Claire. She had always been jealous of me, always tried to steal my spotlight. I didn't invite her to the dinner, but somehow she came anyway. She walked in like she belonged there, wearing a red dress and a fake smile. Everyone looked surprised, but she just waved and said, "I wouldn't miss this." I tried to stay calm, not wanting to ruin my big night. Claire sat beside Michael and whispered things in his ear. I could see his face change every time she spoke. I felt something was wrong, but I smiled and held his hand. Michael stood up and tapped his glass. I knew it was coming, the proposal. I was shaking with joy, but suddenly Claire stood too and said, "Wait, I have something to say." The room went silent and all eyes turned to her. I froze, my heart racing with fear. Claire pulled out her phone and showed a picture of me from years ago. I was drunk and passed out on a couch at a college party. Gasps filled the room, and I wanted to disappear. Claire laughed and said, "Just making sure everyone knows who she really is." Michael looked stunned. I felt like my world had collapsed. I ran to the bathroom and cried uncontrollably. My hands were shaking, my makeup ruined. Claire followed and whispered, "Now we're even." I didn't know what she meant, but I knew she had done this on purpose. I stayed in there until everyone left. That night, Michael texted me, "I need some time to think." I didn't sleep that night. My phone stayed silent, and my pillow was soaked with tears. I couldn't believe Claire would humiliate me like that. We had fought before, but this was too far. My heart felt crushed, and my dreams shattered. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how to fix everything. The next morning, my mom called and said, "What happened last night?" I tried to explain, but my voice cracked. She sighed deeply and said, "Claire told us she was trying to protect Michael." I knew that was a lie. Claire wanted to hurt me. I sat there feeling the anger boil inside me. I stayed inside for days. I didn't answer calls or texts. I kept replaying the dinner in my mind, thinking what I could have done differently. My emotions changed from sadness to rage. I looked at old photos of Claire and me. I wondered, how did she become this person? Then I remembered something from childhood. Claire always hated when I succeeded. She would ruin my birthday gifts or throw tantrums during my school achievements. Maybe this wasn't new. Maybe she had always been like this. I just never saw it clearly. Michael finally messaged me after a week. He said he needed more time. That hurt more than silence. I knew Claire had poisoned his mind, but I didn't beg. I replied, "Take all the time you need. A plan is born." I stared at the mirror, my eyes swollen from crying. I whispered to myself, "She ruined my life, and I did nothing, but not anymore." I started thinking of ways to get back at her, but I didn't want to scream or fight. I wanted something smarter, something that would make her feel the pain I felt. I smiled sadly and whispered, "I'll make her regret it." Claire was married to a man named David. He was kind, calm, and believed in Claire blindly. He loved her deeply, and she always bragged about how perfect her marriage was. I started wondering, was it really perfect? What if it wasn't? What if she had secrets? I began watching her closely. I followed her social media. I noticed things, flirty comments, photos with strange captions. I started saving screenshots. I felt nervous but focused. It was the beginning of my revenge. I created a fake account and started talking to one of the guys she followed often. He didn't know who I was, but soon he shared everything: texts, pictures, calls. Claire was cheating. My hands shook as I saved every proof. I whispered, "This is it." Over the next month, I gathered everything: Photos, voice messages, even videos. I made sure everything was real and undeniable. I printed screenshots and saved them in a folder. I even took pictures of her meeting him in secret. I was scared, but I kept going. Then I waited. I planned a perfect day to reveal everything. Claire had no idea. I smiled every time she called me sister. She had no clue what was coming, and I was patient. The truth comes out. I invited David for coffee at my place. He smiled and brought flowers. I acted nervous but said, "There's something you need to see." I handed him the folder. His eyes widened. He looked at me, confused. As he flipped through the pages, his face changed. He turned pale and said, "This can't be real." I nodded slowly. He kept reading, and his hands began to shake. I said softly, "I didn't want to hurt you, but you deserve the truth." He didn't speak for a long time. Claire came home early that day. She walked in, humming a song. But when she saw David's face, her smile vanished. He looked up and said, "How long, Claire? How long have you been lying to me?" She froze. Her lips trembled. I stood behind him, quiet. Claire tried to lie. She said, "It's not what it looks like." But David wasn't listening. He threw the folder on the floor and shouted, "We're done!" She dropped to her knees, begging. He walked out without another word. I watched her cry just like I had. She turned to me with red eyes. "You did this," she hissed. I nodded slowly and replied, "You started it. I just finished it." She screamed and slammed the door as she left. I felt a strange peace. It was over. I sat down and breathed deeply. I had waited so long for this. I thought revenge would feel cold, but instead, I felt free. I whispered to myself, "Now she knows how it feels." And I smiled for the first time in weeks. Picking up the pieces days passed, and Claire didn't call. My mom called instead, worried and confused. I told her the truth. She sighed and said, "I wish things were different." But I didn't. Claire had earned every bit of this. I had no regrets. Michael came back after 3 weeks. He looked tired and sad. We met at the park where we had our first date. He said, "I'm sorry for doubting you." I cried and hugged him. He said, "I still want to be with you." We didn't talk about Claire. We talked about us, our dreams, our future. He asked me again, this time quietly and honestly, "Will you marry me?" I said yes, with no fear. We hugged under the stars, and I felt something healing in my heart. We had a small engagement, just close friends and family. Claire wasn't invited. I didn't want drama, I just wanted peace, and I finally had it. Later, I saw Claire's social media full of sad quotes. She had moved back with our parents. She stopped talking to most of her friends. She had lost her marriage and her pride. And I didn't feel sorry. I learned something important. Sometimes revenge isn't about hurting someone. It's about showing them who they really are. Claire saw herself in that moment, and that was the greatest punishment of all. My new beginning married life was peaceful. Michael and I moved to a small town. We started fresh, with new memories. I got a new job, made new friends, and focused on love. The past was behind me, but I never forgot the lessons. One day, Claire called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, crying and saying sorry, but I didn't believe her anymore. Some wounds run too deep. Some people never change. Michael asked, "Will you ever forgive her?" I shrugged and said, "Maybe one day, but not today." He nodded and held my hand. We walked silently down the road. I felt light and happy. I looked back at everything that happened, the pain, the betrayal, the revenge. It all made me stronger. I wasn't the same girl anymore. I had grown, I had survived, and I had found peace. Claire became just a name in an old story. I stopped checking her updates. I stopped thinking about her tears. My life was full, and I had no room for poison. I chose love over hate. I chose joy over revenge. As I watched the sunset with Michael, I smiled. Not because I had won, but because I had healed. I whispered to the wind, "Thank you for everything, even the pain." Life had tested me, but I passed. And this was only the beginning of my real story.